Well, hello and welcome back to another edition of the Journal. In today's edition, Gerry and I head back out to the Mojave National Preserve and hike deep into the desert backcountry to provide just a little bit of relief for the Cima Dome Joshua Tree forest that was devastated by wildfire a few years ago. Now, back in mid-January, Dave, Gerry, and I took a trip into the preserve to explore this little-known piece of the national park system. At 1,542,776 acres, it's the third largest unit of the national park system in the contiguous 48 states. That's the lower 48, not counting Alaska and Hawaii. On our adventure, we climbed to the top of the third highest sand dune in North America, Kelso Dunes. We also visited the historic Kelso Train Depot, scaled through slots carved in Banshee Canyon by a series of metal rings bolted into the rocks, and visited a large white cross mounted on top of Sunrise Rock that was the source of a decade-long legal battle that went all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. But that wasn't all. We also climbed down deep into a lava tube to peer through a natural skylight and hiked through the largest grove of Joshua trees in the world on our way to the summit of Teutonia Peak. Wow, what an adventure. Even though our trip was a resounding success, we left with just a little bit of sadness. Seeing all those burned Joshua trees, that whole Cima Dome area looked like the damn surface of the moon. As we kicked our way through the ashes on the way to the summit, we thought, this is bad. This is really, really bad. And Gerry said, I don't think any of this is coming back. Now, after Gerry got home, he did a little bit of research and discovered not only was the National Park System making plans to restore the Joshua Tree Forest, but there was a way in which we could help. Now, Gerry saw this post on the Mojave Preserve's website and sent me the link that looked like a World War II recruitment poster from Drew Kaiser, a National Park botanist. Help plant Joshua trees on Cima Dome, March 4th to 13th, 2022. In August 2020, the Dome Fire burned over 44,000 acres, or roughly 70 square miles, of one of the densest and largest Joshua tree forests in the world on Cima Dome. While assessing the damage to the forest, we noticed some areas with fairly low to moderate burn intensity, with pockets of unburned islands. However, the burn intensity throughout most of the fire was catastrophic, and nearly all above-ground vegetation was scorched and would not survive. We estimated that over 1 million Joshua trees were burned in that fire. Now, Cima Dome is modeled to be a climate refugia for the species. That means it's like a refuge, but it's, I guess, pronounced refugia. However, Joshua trees have poor seed dispersal and may only migrate about 100 feet every 20 years. So the Mojave National Preserve is taking steps to ensure that there are trees, and more specifically, a seed source, within the badly affected areas of the burn, so they may reestablish naturally before the effects of climate change impact the recruitment and sustainability of the population on Cima Dome. And that's where we come in. Drew goes on to say further in his website, volunteers are recommended to have the following. They should be comfortable with desert hiking experience. Okay, so we feel pretty good about this one, and we've hiked in Death Valley and we've hiked in Ansparego over the years, so we feel pretty good about this one. You have to have the ability to hike 3 to 5 miles. Well, that's no biggie here. We've done a lot of hikes further than that. You have to also be able to carry up to 30 pounds. Sure, not willingly, but we can manage with proper motivation. You also have to have the ability to navigate and collect data by GPS and/or mobile apps. Well, the GPS, pretty good at that. The mobile apps, well, we probably need a little bit of work on that one. And you also have to have the ability to be self-sufficient while camping, because there's no services out here in the Mojave Desert. Hey, this had potential to be part of the rebuilding of the Joshua trees around Cima Dome. Now, Gerry, Dave, and I have never really done anything like this before, but it was too late now. We had already grown attached to this not-so-little but relatively unknown national preserve. We felt like we kind of owed it to the preserve after having all these great memories and exploring the hidden gems of the park. But what could a couple of guys do to help 1 million burned-out trees? Turns out quite a bit. The main objective of the restoration is to ensure Joshua trees are present and producing throughout the Cima Dome. We will be planting groups of Joshua trees with the hopes that they can survive and provide a seed source for the natural repopulation of the worst areas of the fire. But wait, there's more. Cima Dome is about 2/3 designated wilderness. So instead of caging all the plants, which we believe will help protect from herbivory, which is, keep the rabbits and the rodents from eating it, but this would be an issue in the eyes of the Wilderness Act. They're not allowed to have any man-made objects inside the wilderness. So they're performing an experiment during the first year of planting to determine if it's necessary to achieve these adequate survival rates. The results from that very first year of planting will inform the next 3 years of planting. Okay, so how can we help? These are the guidelines of our mission. Planting treatments. At each planting site or group, you and your team of 5 to 6 people will plant 6 Joshua trees in 4 different ways. The ways or treatment in which they are planted have been predetermined and will be given to you once your team is assigned a grouping. The 4 different planting treatments are as follows. Open, caged. Plant Joshua trees at least 3 meters or about 10 feet away from the nearest live or dead shrub. Once planted, install a cage around the plant. Attach an ID tag to the top of the cage with baling wire. Open, not caged. Plant the Joshua tree at least 3 meters from the nearest live or dead plant. Install an ID tag to the berm with a landscape staple. PC, which is under a nurse plant, caged. Plant the Joshua tree within 1 meter of a live, preferred, or dead shrub. Joshua tree should be roughly on the north side of the nurse plant. Once planted, install the cage around the plant and attach an ID tag to the top of the cage with baling wire. PX, under a nurse plant, not caged. Plant tree according to previous description, but do not install the cage. Install the ID tag in the berm with a landscape staple. Okay, so that sounds kind of complicated, didn't it? Well, that's what I thought at first. I just figured we'd hike out a ways into the desert, find a good burn spot, and plant a couple of trees. Turns out it's way more involved than that. Using a phone-based mapping app called Survey 123, our team will navigate to our assigned planting location. Once we arrive at the site, we'll decide as a group where each plant will go based on the assigned treatments for that grouping. That means whether it's in a cage or not in a cage, whether it's in the open or not in the open. For seedlings going under the nurse shrub, the planting location must be on the north side of the shrub with at least partial shade from the nurse plant. North is toward the I-15 or away from the power lines. Do not plant the trees too close to the central root system, as this will probably kill the nurse plant. For most of the planting locations, there should be enough live nurse plants available. They surveyed that ahead of time, I guess. However, though, if there's not enough for your assigned grouping, dead shrubs are acceptable as long as they're rooted in the ground and they provide a reasonable amount of shade. Trees planted in the open need to be planted at least 3 meters or 10 feet from the nearest closest shrub. All plants should be spaced at least 4 to 5 meters apart or 15 feet. We were to follow these instructions closely to ensure the survival of the new plants. Now, all of this was getting to be a little too much for me to remember. Luckily, the National Park System had thought of everything and included a wildlife biologist and a mapping specialist in our group to not only find the exact location of the planting, but to teach us how to use the correct techniques to ensure success of the seedlings. Since the Mojave National Preserve is in a remote location, there is no fee to enter and no complicated reservation system to negotiate like Yosemite. Here you just show up, drive along some desert dirt trail, and hopefully find a nice spot to camp. You're on your own out here in the Mojave Desert. There's no restrooms, there's no water, and no services at all. You're completely on your own. As the trip dates neared, I was a little concerned because I hadn't heard from Dave in a while. Turns out Dave's father wasn't doing real well, and he had received a phone call from his cousin that said his father was under hospice care and wasn't expected to make it through the weekend. Now, naturally, Dave was upset and called to tell me that he wasn't going on this adventure. After he explained the details, we all understood. So there we were, only a few days out from our adventure, and the weather predictions were holding good. A little windy out in the desert, but that's to be expected. My Jeep was packed and ready to go. My meal plan was set. All I needed was some ice and a last check of the weather before driving out of the driveway. 23 degrees, Gerry said in reply to my text. Wow, this is going to be a cold night in the desert. We better throw in some extra layers. When Gerry first read the logistics of the planting adventure, he noticed that the National Park staging area was in a place called Valley View Ranch, an abandoned ranch house and barn located a few miles up a dirt road that was donated to the National Park Service. He also noticed that it was only a short drive from the Mojave War Memorial Cross, coincidentally where we had camped last time. This looked like a perfect spot to establish a base camp for our adventure. We agreed to meet up at what we called the Mojave Cross Camp. Packed up, iced up, and ready to do some planning, I hit the road and headed into the Mojave Desert. According to Google Maps, it was a little over 200 miles and 3 hours to get into the preserve, to drive to the Mojave Cross and be in camp. Being that there were no services in the preserve, I'd need to stop off in Baker for gas or top off the tank. On the way toward the preserve, I took a side route along Razor Road to try to find the elusive Mojave megaphone. That's kind of a real oddity that's mounted on top of a mountain, and we'll get to that in another episode. This ended up being a great big mistake. Well, this is what it looks like on Razor Road. It does have a sign I just passed. This is AC8828, whatever that means. And I'm sure I'm going to have quite a few sections of washboard road or dirt. And there might be some sandy sections. This is a Jeep and it's four-wheel drive. I don't have it in four-wheel drive now. I don't think I'm going to need it. If I hit a sandy patch, I'll be sure and flip it into four-wheel drive. The last thing I want to do is get buried out here when I'm all by myself. It's not really that wise to be going off-road in the middle of nowhere by yourself. But I do have a recovery kit in the Jeep, and I have satellite communication and ham radio communication as well. And I think I can pretty much get out of just about anything. So I guess we'll see here. I'm going to keep it in two-wheel drive for now. If it gets any sandier, I'll put it in four-wheel drive. But for now, I'm good. Looks like we got a sand dune in front of us. And I'm keeping an eye on my phone. I downloaded a route, believe it or not, on Google Maps. And I downloaded it for offline use. And last time we were up this way, believe it or not, we had pretty decent cell phone coverage through most of the valley. Anytime you're in a place where you can, for the most part, see Interstate 15, you most likely have cell coverage because the cell towers are on the hilltops on all the way between Vegas and Barstow. So I have pretty good coverage. So I probably won't even need the offline maps, but if I do need them, I do have them. So I'm going to continue down the road here. And it looks like I got a turn here coming up in a little while. I got to keep my eye out. I got a ways to go. It's not that far, but it's 53 minutes. I think actually 44 minutes now is what it says to the Mojave megaphone. So if it's interesting enough, and if it's the road's in decent enough condition, I might see if Gerry's interested in coming back out here. So that's one of the reasons I'm checking it out. We didn't get to do it last time, so if it's something that I could do or that it's worth doing again, I'll see if Gerry's interested and wants to do it, because I know he was interested in it too. Anyway, I'm continuing on Razor Road. It's a little sandy, but not too bad. All right, well, this is it. This is my whoop-de-doo road, I guess. Hopefully it's not like this all the way out there. Feels like I'm skiing moguls. Well, I'm kind of basically just traveling along this fence line, but it's really sandy here, and it makes me a little nervous. I had to put it in four-wheel drive, and I am slipping a bit, so this is definitely a road Gerry's not going to want to be on. And according to the GPS, I am, in fact, on the right route. I said I didn't air down the tires. If I start to slip and slide too much more, I might have to do that. I definitely don't want to get stuck out here because there's nobody out here to get me. There's no AAA out here, so I'm only, I don't know, I can't read the GPS here while I'm bouncing. It looks like that mountain to my left, over there somewhere, is where I'm headed. So as long as this doesn't get too much more sandy, I should be okay. The driving on the hard pack's, great, but the sand stuff makes me a little nervous. The last section nearing the location of the megaphone was scoured by high winds, blowing sand, and rough mogul-like depressions. In some places, I don't even think I was on the road by driving across country in the Jeep like on a rat patrol. The gear in the back of my truck got airborne a few times, and I managed to somehow completely destroy 2 of the 3 lanterns I had brought on this trip. Now, when I came to the dead end of the railroad crossing, I knew I wouldn't be able to cross the tracks here. I could see the location of the megaphone, but I just simply couldn't reach it. Being solo, I decided to turn tail and head back to the interstate defeated. The wind had been howling ever since I left Barstow, slowing traffic headed toward Vegas. When I began descending down the hill toward Baker, I saw what looked like a sandstorm blowing across the interstate. Well, I'm back on the road. Thankful to be back on smooth highway again. We're coming up on Baker, and it looks like there's a sandstorm. The wind is blowing all these cars around. Normally they'd be doing 85, 90 miles an hour through here. and everybody's doing about 60 because the wind is so bad. It's blowing from left to right. And the guy was in a van, full-size minivan next to me, and he was all over the road. So thank God there's no empty big rigs on the highway. At least I hope there's not, because they'd be all on their sides right now. I'm gonna get off here at Baker and top off for gas one more time, then I'll be getting off at Cima Road and I'll be heading into the Mojave National Preserve. I'll be coming up here in a little bit. In fact, Baker exit, next two exits, so I'm gonna get off here, come into Baker from the west side, I guess. Well, there's the old Royal Hawaiian Motel. Looks like it's seen better days, huh? Well, I wonder what gas is here in Baker. Normally, Baker is one of the more expensive places on your way to Vegas to get gas, but it's such a common stop, and the price of gas has been soaring. I'm curious as to what it is here, but I noticed gas at my house was $5.89 a gallon, so it doesn't look like it's that much worse here in Baker. I think it's $5.89 or $5.99. Let's take a look. $5.99. Hey, that's only 10 cents more than my house. It's not bad. Well, I am in Baker, and it's about a 50-mile-an-hour wind and blowing sand. It's like we're in the middle of the desert. Oh, wait a minute, we are in the desert. Well, I'm topping off the gas tank here at the Chevron in Baker. It's about a 50-mile-an-hour wind right now. It's not that bad temperature-wise. It's in the 60s. In fact, you can barely make out Button Point. But the visibility is down to about a quarter mile from the sand blowing across the freeway. Well, I am officially in the Mojave National Preserve. According to the GPS, I'll be there in 11 minutes. And that's at the Mojave War Memorial Cross, which I did an episode on a while back. It's 52 degrees here at about almost 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Gerry left a few hours ago, an hour ago, so he's behind me a little ways. You can kind of see the rise of the dome off to the right. When you think of the Cima Dome, I thought it was a really obvious peak with a dome. It's not. It's that subtle feature to the right here. When we get past some of the sagebrush, you'll see it. It's a little incline and then a decline. It looks like a little lump on the horizon. That's actually the Cima Dome. We'll get a closer look at that here in a little bit. You know, I was also going to say that we've been climbing quite a bit since we left Baker. It was 64 degrees in Baker just 30 miles ago. And even when we got off the interstate, Interstate 15 right here at Cima Road, the temperature was 59, and now it's 46. So it's dropped considerably, almost 20 degrees since Baker. So this is definitely a little higher elevation. That's probably why it's also why you see more Joshua trees at this elevation than you do down in the lower part of the desert. In fact, that was a big Joshua tree that just snapped in half. I don't know if you saw that or not. But we should be coming up on the Memorial Cross here in a few minutes. Wow, this is a pretty devastating minute. And we're getting a little closer to the Mojave War Memorial Cross. I believe that is Teutonia Peak off to the right. That's the one that we climbed last time we were here. It's not the one in front of us, I don't think. It's a little more jagged, it has a little more rocks on it. But you can see the left side of the road, the Joshua trees look pretty good. Off to the right, there are quite a few burned ones. They're not all burned, but there's quite a few. Like this patch right here is pretty bad. But the stuff on the left looks pretty good. So you can tell we're getting in the area. We're getting closer. All right, well, we just passed the Teutonia Peak trailhead, and this is the Mojave Cross right here. We're going to make a turn here because the area we're going to be trying to camp at is down this road. Looks like there's several vehicles here. I'm kind of got my fingers crossed that we're going to get to a spot where we can camp. spot to the left. That's close. I might take a drive over there, see if that's doable. Well, as you can tell, it's a little windy out here, and it's cold. It's about 45 degrees with about a 30-mile-an-hour wind. So, luckily, I forgot I had these in my little go bag in the Jeep, as I'm setting up camp here at the Mojave Preserve. They're Mills surplus from the Persian Gulf War. When I was at work, they were giving out a bunch of old military surplus stuff. And I gotta admit, these goggles are nice. They've got holes in the bottom so they breathe really well, they don't fog up, and they're tinted. So I don't have to wear my sunglasses underneath them. I don't have to worry about debris and dirt and sand blowing in. So that'll help me as I get the camp all set up here. I'm waiting for Gerry. He should be here any minute. You know, when you think of the desert, you don't think about cold out in the desert. I think it's going to be hot, but it's not. Overnight low here tonight could go as low as 22 degrees. So we have to be prepared for it. I have this oversized down jacket, and I actually have another smaller down jacket I'm going to be wearing underneath this one. And of course I have thermal layers as well, along with a couple of sets of gloves and some thermal long johns. So tomorrow we're going to be heading over to the ranch over here, and we're going to be trying to plant Joshua trees as part of the Cima Dome reforestation project. We're going to help out. We're going to volunteer. We're going to help out with the National Park Service out here in the Mojave National Preserve, and we're going to try to plant as many as we can in the 2 days we're going to be here. But I tell you what, if it's 22 degrees in the morning when we start planting, it's going to be cold quick, and hopefully we'll be okay. In the meantime, I got to get the camp established the best I can with this high wind, and I got the Jeep turned sideways to try to block some of the wind, but it's not the greatest. And when Gerry gets here, he's going to park probably behind me, and that's probably going to help a little bit too. On equipment tonight, the wind will die down a little bit. It won't be as bad, because when it's this windy, we're not going to be able to have a fire. Without the fire, we're going to get really cold. Gerry's brought his big heater, so we'll see if we're going to be able to hang out outside and enjoy the star show tonight. It ought to be gorgeous tonight. There should be a cloud in the sky. And if all we have is the heater, that's all we got. So hoping that wind dies down and we're able to do a fire tonight. In the meantime, I got to go finish my beer. Well, this is already turning out to be quite an adventure. I got off the Interstate 15 back on Razor Road, and I went down that side road trying to find the Mojave megaphone. And Razor Road wasn't so bad, but when I got on that Crucero Road, it was basically right next to the sand dunes because of the 50, 60 mile an hour wind we have. It was blowing sand and dirt and debris across the road, and I couldn't even tell where the road was. I got lost so many times I can't even tell you. I couldn't even find other people's tracks to follow. I was making my own. I was like Rat Patrol cruising through the sand dunes in Africa somewhere. It was pretty bad. But I actually made it. I made it all the way to the railroad tracks, but I couldn't get over them. So that was kind of a bummer. I thought about, putting it in 4 low and doing some crawling over the top. I thought about my luck. I'll get stuck. I'll get high centered on one of those beams, and then a train will come. That'll be the end of me. So I thought, you know what, I'm by myself, this isn't worth it, I'm just going to turn around. So it was kind of a bummer. I ended up driving all the way back along the dirt road, made it back, but the stuff in the back of the Jeep was just bouncing big time. And I have a big heavy Pelican box. It has a lot of my recovery gear in it, and it's heavy. It's got a bottle jack and a bunch of other stuff, and it's heavy. And it was bouncing around, and a couple of times, man, I thought I got a whiff of kerosene or something, of lamp oil or Coleman fuel, and I just knew it was bad. So anyway, I got off the dirt road, got back on the 15, and headed north into Baker. Got off in Baker and topped off the gas tank. And Baker was nuts. 50, 60 mile an hour wind, blowing sand, and visibility was down to a half mile. And I was going into a little bit of a headwind, so even in the Jeep, third gear is best I could do. Made it over to Cima Road and made it off the off-ramp. And thank God that's a nice road. That's a nice paved, smooth road into the preserve, nobody on it. And I got to war memorial, you know, the memorial cross that I've talked about before in other episodes. And I went down the same dirt road, and there were a couple of people here, but one spot that we drove by last time, it was a really nice spot. There was nobody there, it was empty. So I pulled in there, and I thought this would be a nice spot. It'd be an upgrade from the last time we were here. But much to my chagrin, there's no cell signal there. And I know that's not a reason to pick a campsite whether it has cell signal or not, but I gotta admit, it is kind of nice having a little, just even if it's 1 or 2 bars, you know, I can call home and check on the wife, let her know that I made it here okay. And since Jerry's coming in later, I could give him the latest updates on road and weather conditions on his way in. So I went to our old spot, and sure enough, it's got cell signal. It's not as wind protected as the other one, but it's not too bad. But having said that, right now, the wind's like 50 miles an hour right here. The good thing is there's no sand. It's all decomposed granite, so there's not a lot airborne. I tried to sit outside in my chair with my feet propped up and have some chips and salsa, and it was blowing the jar. It was blowing the chips out of the bag. Blew my beer over, and it was cold. I had a shemagh around my neck and around my head and face. I had my hood and my down jacket up. It's about 45 or so degrees, but that wind is just a killer. So I decided, you know what am I doing? What am I sitting out here in the elements for? I can come in the Jeep. You know, I've got 2 sleeping bags and a pad. It's protected by the wind. It's a lot warmer. It's quieter. It's a lot nicer. And I can set my beer on the ice chest right next to me here, and I have a place to put my chips and salsa. So I'm just going to relax in the back of the Jeep for a while, take a break, recuperate a little bit, and mourn the loss of 2 of my lanterns. My Coleman unleaded lantern just got obliterated. That box, that heavy box, must have bounced right on top of it, just shattered the globe in a million pieces. And even my Dietz lantern, which I've never used before, which I'm kind of bummed about, it's just a tin lantern, and it got crushed. It was crushed, and the glass is all over the back of the Jeep, so I had to sweep it all up, put it in a trash bag, and so I'll have some things to do when I get home. The only good thing is my Furhan lantern, my little green, kind of really nice lantern. I have that in a wooden box, and that one's intact. That one didn't get touched. So that means when I get home, I'm going to have to build me another box for my Coleman lantern, and build another box for my Dietz lantern. So I think I might be able to, you know, it's tin. I can probably bend it back into shape. I can buy another globe from Dietz. It shouldn't cost me more than 10 or 15 bucks. It'll be worth it. And I've got a bunch of other ones, but it's more the principle. I've never used it. I want to use it now. And hey, now it's got a story to tell. But in the meantime, I'm waiting for Jerry. He called me a half hour. Actually, I called him about a half hour ago, and he was over the Cajon Pass, and he was approaching Apple Valley, Victorville area. Not too far, so about an hour or so, 2 hours away. So in the meantime, I'm going to sit here and chill out and have my Sierra Nevada Atomic Torpedo West Coast IPA. This is really good. I bought 3 of these just on a whim, and I actually really like them. They're double IPAs. So I'm going to have my double IPA, have my chips and salsa, and mourn the loss of my Coleman lantern. Anyway, hopefully I'll be able to record some video on this episode because it's just so windy out here. I don't know if you're going to be able to hear anything. I hate to think I'm going to have to record the whole episode in the Jeep, but you never know, I might. But anyway, I'll touch back with you in a few minutes and let you know what's going on. I'll let you know when Jerry gets here. Alrighty, take care. Now it's not even dark yet, and it's already 36 degrees. It's 34 over on Jerry's thermometer, so we're gonna have to get the fire, I think, going a little early tonight so I can get my salmon cooking for tonight. As the sun's getting a little lower on the horizon. So the golden hour, man, it makes for great photos. I went ahead and used my my little stove over there, and I heated up some water for some instant coffee, but it's just too damn hot to drink right now. So maybe I'll get the fire going, let some coals die down a little bit, and then I can cook my salmon tonight. Well, we've got the sun setting to the west over the Mojave Preserve. It's going to be chilly tonight. There's a jet flying overhead, probably heading to Vegas. We're only about 50 miles from Vegas. We got the camp established here at the Mojave Cross Camp, as we're calling it. And once I get the coals to die down a little bit, I'm going to throw in my lodge cast iron skillet on the grate and cook up some salmon. Ought to be good tonight. Well, I'm cooking some blackened salmon seared in the carbon steel lodge skillet over the campfire. I cooked some fried potatoes and I throw in some broccoli. And we'll see how this comes out. It's getting pretty close. A little bit, I'll have to take a little piece off and see how well it's cooked. Well, that'll do it for this episode, part 1 of our trip out to the Mojave National Preserve to help with the restoration of the Cima Dome Joshua Tree Forest. In this episode, you learned about what it takes to become a National Park Cima Dome volunteer, some of the planting techniques involved in reseeding the Joshua Tree Forest, and the trials and tribulations of remote driving and backcountry camping in the Mojave Desert. In the next edition of the Journal, Gerry and I head over to the Valley View Ranch to get an education in the biology of Joshua trees before packing up and heading across Aiken Mine Road deep into the Cima Dome. Here we assemble into our groups and begin our trek across the desert loaded with 40 pounds of water and a bucket of Joshua tree seedlings. If you have any questions or comments about this or any other edition of the Journal, feel free to post a note in the comments section below. And also don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell to get the latest editions of the Journal as I post them. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you down the trail, maybe one day in the middle of the Mojave Desert. Take care, bye-bye.